Get started. The minutes of the last meeting have been distributed. Are there any amendments to the minutes? Is there a motion for the minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? There's an agenda that's been distributed to the members and released to the public. Are there amendments to the agenda? All right, so the agenda is placed on the table for discussion. So first of all, actually, I want to wish, we got a new member of the State Budget Agency, and today's her 30th birthday, so Devin, happy birthday to Devin. And you've been here, what, like how many months, a month or two? First month, there you go. Happy birthday. Again, I want to thank Grace College for letting us use their facility here, and I want to thank Ivy Tech for hosting us, and like to hear from Dr. Elsperman.
Thank you, Senator Mishler, and to State Budget Committee. Thank you for allowing us to host your morning, but it would be obvious that I should be thanking Grace College for their hospitality and allowing us to remain here and to do this all together. So great thanks there. It is our pleasure as Ivy Tech Community College, your community college of Indiana, to support this and to be responsive to your needs. You are in the Fort Wayne service area and our site right here in Warsaw, Indiana. So you are in the midst of a great part of Ivy Tech. So it's our pleasure to serve, and if you have any questions for me, I know you know Mary Jane Michalak, our government relations, but as we can be of service to you, we know that we are Indiana's workforce engine. We partner proudly with all of the other four-year institutions, including Grace College, across the state, and know that this is something that we all need to be committed to ensure Hoosiers have the post-secondary education that allows them to succeed and our Indiana economy to grow. So with that, thank you, Senator Mishler, and welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Elsperman. So we're in my district, actually, and so I'd like to introduce the House member that has this district as well, Representative Craig Snow. And next to him is his predecessor, Emeritus State Representative David Wilkins. So welcome.
Yeah, David.
Both residents of the community, and Representative Snow is an alumni of Grace College. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the projects. We'll do the agency projects. We've got the State Museum. And Kathy,
Good morning, thank you. We have a few things going on, as you always know, and it's always exciting to hear about the preservation projects that we're working on across the state of Indiana as a part of our 12 locations. I've met with many of you, so hopefully I've been able to answer any questions, but I will run through the projects. These are the matching dollars, so we've raised $1 million and you're matching that $1 million so that we can do this important preservation work. You had allowed us to repaint the house at Gene Stratton Porter in Geneva, Indiana, and next to it is a visitor center that looks rustic but is not supposed to. So we would like to be able to make sure that that visitor center looks welcoming and as if it's in great shape. Somehow whatever they used the first time unfortunately didn't work, but we're confident that the second time will take, and I won't be back asking for that for a while. Secondly, we have a mile-long brick wall around the Harmonist Cemetery in New Harmony, Indiana. The Harmonists were all buried in one place with no markers, so there is only a wall that goes around the cemetery wall, and it needs to be repointed and cleaned and made sure that it does not fall over and is in good shape, as it is very representative of that community. As I want to do, our mansions always need something, and in this case, if any of you have basements, you can imagine what a basement of a mansion might look like with a dirt floor. So we need dollars for moisture mitigation. We've also asked for dollars in our CR&R money that I'll refer to, and those two projects allow us to both get the information we need, and then this allows us to implement getting that actually taken care of. That house is full of artifacts, as well as the house being an artifact itself. So it's very important that we take care of that infrastructure that allows us to also take care of the artifacts that are inside. Currently, many of you, and thank you for coming and joined us at the State Museum in our conference room. Prior to that, that conference room had been used for camps, and if you looked around, that might not be the best place to hold a camp because there's carpet to start with, but other than that, it might be that the finance people are next door and could hear the kids screaming. I don't know. But we have a room downstairs that was added to the building after it was built that has been used primarily for school lunches. But we would really like the opportunity, as our camps have become very popular, the reason we're in the conference room is to upgrade the HVAC system in that room. Right now it's being run through the garage, and we'd like to run it through the building itself so that we could utilize that room for the 12 months out of the year and do programming, camps, school programming, as well as host the kids for lunch. And if you've ever been on one of those field trips, lunch is very important. In Metamora, Indiana, we have a large project that you've been helping us with. We're doing, completed an engineering study on the locks as well as the aqueduct, and attached to that mill is a water wheel. Now that mill itself was run by turbines, but those turbines are in the water and they're hard to see. So we do tell that story within the mill. But in 1973, just prior to the bicentennial, they put a water wheel onto this mill. Now many of the mills along that river did in fact use water wheels to operate. This particular mill just happened to not. But the town and the community have become very attached to having the water wheel. It's an attractor, as you can imagine. It is a legitimate STEM story. So what we would like to do is get that water wheel moving so that we can really tell that full mill story, both for our mill and for the other mills along the way. There's a significant amount of masonry work that needs to be done, so we're not buying a $240,000 water wheel, I promise you. It's all of the work that is required in order to be able to get that water wheel to operate. We also, in doing projects like that, are required before we do anything to look under the ground to be sure that we're not disturbing any archaeological projects or anything. Even if it has been done and we're going exactly down the same water line that was there before, we still have to go in and make sure that there's not any archaeology around that area. And this particular machine, a total station, would allow us to do that work ourselves rather than hiring it out. It also then allows our archaeologist to store all the information about our sites and do that additional archaeology work on our sites, particularly at places like Angel Mounds where it's so important. So she would like to be able to purchase that so that in the long run we can save on our operating expenses. And then lastly, we discovered during COVID, we have 3 very large properties, acres and acres of property, and we, due to staffing issues, had to hire out the cutting of the grass and the caretaking of TC Steel, and discovered it was really not cost efficient or effective on a site that large. When it's a small mansion and it's a yard, small mansion, it's affordable, but when it's these large sites like Angel Mounds and TC Steel and Whitewater, it's much more effective if we do that work ourselves, and we need the machinery to do that. The machinery that we have right now, no offense, Mike, is leftover DNR from 20 years, and we inherited that from when they'd already used it. So we really need to upgrade that so that we can effectively and efficiently get that work done. So those are the projects that we're looking for with our $1 million match. They are vital to both preservation and our operations, and we certainly appreciate if you would allow us to spend the money in this way.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
The second component that we have are 2 places that we are looking for our CR&R dollars to be released, so you approve them as part of the state budget. But I'm back to the windows that many of you are always hearing me sing about, but they are all wooden windows that have to be hand taken care of. And so we have both at Angel Mounds, the original archaeological site that was used to store all of the artifacts, as well as the Culbertson Mansion and the carriage house. The windows in both of those need to be replaced and redone. So we're asking for those dollars to be released.
Any questions? All right, continue.
And then I have one last one, I promise, I'm almost done. And then the last is that we've been working to connect all 12 of our sites through a security system. The museum in Indianapolis is secured for 24 hours with someone on site. What we would like to be able to do is make sure that we can watch all of our sites, some of which are somewhat remote, as Gene Stratton Porter, so that we can take care of the entire property. We don't want to wait until an alarm goes off to understand that there's a problem. So by integrating these sites and having a secure system throughout all 12 locations, we can do a better job of taking care of our sites, and we'd like those dollars released. Thank you very much for your time.
I'm gonna pause for just a minute. I didn't do the introductions. Representative Hamilton wasn't here to remind me this time to do the introductions. So we're gonna hold off 1 second. We're gonna start over here and we'll do the introductions.
I'm Heath Holloway with the Legislative Services Agency.
Susan Preble with the Senate Democratic Caucus.
Eddie Melton, Senate District 3.
Eric Gonzalez, House Democrat, Fiscal Analyst.
Gregory Porter, House District 96.
Chris Ricci, Senate Republican Caucus.
Ryan Mishler, Senate District 9.
Tim Brown, House District 41.
Ben Tooley, House Republican Fiscal Analyst.
Joe Habig, Deputy Budget Director.
Lisa Ackelbert, Deputy Budget Director.
Liz Brown, Senate District 15.
Seth Hinshaw, Senate Republican Fiscal Analyst.
Bob Cherry, House District 53.
Liza Bartlett, Sherman, Fiscal Analyst for the House Republicans.
All right, thank you. If you're watching, I'm sorry, Representative Hamilton, I missed that, so. All right, we'll continue. Next, we have NDOT. Steve McAvoy.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. NDOT has two projects on the agenda today. Our first one is the renovation of the Bluffton Subdistrict building. So we're requesting $4,950,000 for this renovation. So this building, 16,800 square foot building, was built in 1996. And it's been experiencing pretty significant structural and operational issues. Proper engineering of precast panels require an 8-inch backer, structural backer. All of these buildings, and we have 5, this is our second one that we are requesting, have a 4-inch backer. So what happens is when you have temperature extremes, the panels begin to bow, they crack, the corner joints separate, and we experience these problems that never go away. So the structural issues do result in pretty significant precast issues. The age and condition of the structures contributed to multiple operational environmental issues as well, such as ADA accessibility in the restrooms and a conference room being on the upper level without an elevator. We have garage bays that are not large enough to service fully dressed dump trucks or tow plow trucks or semis that we now use on a day-to-day basis. And we do not have the inability to wash trucks inside the building with containment. So the renovation of this building will mitigate all these concerns and extend the life of the building significantly. In addition, the renovation project will reduce the amount of time it takes to service our dump trucks and reduce public safety concerns, especially during a snow fight. Questions?
Representative Brown.
Yes. How long do you expect the renovations to last? 20 years?
So the architectural team has told me that once we replace it with brick veneer, it would be a 50-year building.
50
so
years.
we're hitting the reset button on it.
Okay.
Right now they are only 25 years old, but if we don't do something now, we would have the risk that the building would be not able to be occupied. Like when they lifted some of the panels off in Evansville and just set them on the ground, they crumbled into a million pieces. So
okay.
We have to do something now.
Unfortunately, none of us will be here in 50 years to hold you to it.
That's
so.
very true, Senator.
All right, continue.
Yeah, last project they have is we're requesting $1.5 million for our phase 4 of 4 phases for the replacement of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems at our central testing building in Indianapolis. So this building was built in 1967, 66,000 square feet. It's the biggest building that NDOT currently occupies. It has numerous defects that we must address for safety, environmental, and operational reasons. The risk of not updating the building would have employee safety consequences as well as OSHA fines. It poses a risk to employee safety, health, and the environment currently. So many of the building's original mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems are intact and while operational are at the end of their useful life. The building's potable water is undrinkable due to contaminants from the distribution piping. The electrical system is undersized for current and future use, and the building does not have a fire sprinkler system. In addition, the air handling units are no longer able to provide enough makeup air to the labs, causing them to go negative. Positive air pressure is a requirement to keep labs and instruments within calibration limits. So this phase 4, the final phase, will include renovation of the main office area to include new carpeting, painting, ceiling and wall configurations, standalone HVAC units, restroom rehab, temperature control replacement, new LED lighting, and extending the fire alarm and the fire suppression system into this final phase. It should take 12 months to complete. The total estimated project cost for all phases was still over $11 million.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Next, we have DNR. We have Mike Smith. And while he's coming up here, I just want to mention that yesterday we were at the Tri-State facility. Got some sad news that Mike is going to be retiring at the end of the year after 30-some years.
Well, 1977 was my first full-time job.
So thank you for your service.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Good morning, all, and thank you all for visiting us at Tri-County yesterday. We had a wonderful time, and we loved the hospitality business. DNR has 2 items on today's agenda. The first one is Turkey Run Inn mold remediation. DNR is requesting funding for the renovation of numerous guest rooms and other areas at the Turkey Run Inn located in Park County in western Indiana. This funding will complement the deferred maintenance allocation for Inn's rehabilitation. A leaking roof was repaired in 2019 and is the likely cause of this mold damage. The Turkey Run Inn has 57 guest rooms and when fully operational generates over $3 million in gross revenue, resulting in approximately $1.5 million in net revenue per year. Our legal staff researched the possible insurance recovery of this damage, but mold was not an allowable recovery item.
All right.
Number 2 on the list, state forest water and wastewater in the amount of $550,000. DNR requests funding for dump station installation and for the drilling of secondary wells for campsites within DNR state forests. There are 6 state forests that have close to 300 campsites. Those state forests are Salamone, which is in Wabash County, Jackson, Washington, Martin, Pike, Owen Putman, and Clark State Forest. These additional dump stations and repairs will keep us in compliance with the State Department of Health.
Any questions? Senator Brown.
Not a question, just a comment. Thank you very much for your hospitality. And I just might add that the information they shared yesterday is best year ever.
Best year ever.
And your
By
hospitality,
far.
by far, your hospitality is off the charts. Your revenues are off and up off the charts, and yet you did that with open labor force. I mean, that
That's
you were
correct.
down in your labor
Short
force.
staff,
So
yep. They do a remarkable job.
They did. They did a great job yesterday too. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else? All right, thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Next is the School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Todd Malone.
Good morning. ISBVI is requesting funding in the amount of $717,690 for some masonry, brick, and tuck pointing structural repairs, focusing on the utility tunnel. The utility tunnel is 350 feet long, 10 feet wide, 10 feet tall. It houses the steam distribution lines for the entire campus, as well as domestic water pipes and a 13,000 volt bus bar, which supplies electricity to the entire campus. The tunnel sits on a hillside. It is level with the ground at the top, and the west side is exposed. And it's made of poured concrete, which has cracks and deterioration over the years, in the last 90 years, allowing rainwater and to penetrate and the concrete, causing the rebar to rust and push the concrete apart. There are 4 specific areas of special concern that could lead to a collapse, which would end in a loss of heat, loss of electricity, and domestic water.
All right, thank you. Next is the Adjutant General. We have Brigadier General Winslow and Jim Mahern.
Thanks, sir. Colonel Steve Hines in lieu of General Winslow, sir. Last minute sub. Hey, appreciate the opportunity to be here. Real quick update on some of our efforts across the state. We continue our COVID fight. I have about 700 soldiers out deployed with mobile vaccine unit teams across the state, all 92 counties at times, as well as strike teams, both inoculating citizens, testing, and then now we started doing booster shots, and then on down the road here we'll see the 5 to 11-year-old children eligible, as well as boosters for Moderna and J&J. So keeping busy there, as well, working in 3 or 4 hospitals, augmenting those workforces. From on the other side of the coin, we still have 6,300 or so guests, Afghan guests, that still at Camp Atterbury, working through that process of accepting them, indoctrinating them, I guess for lack of a better term, to American culture. And that's an ongoing process, and we'll see that mission continue for the next few months. But no issues, no significant issues at this time from those 2 mission sets that are concurrently going on. So the thrust, the reason why we're here today is just simply to revisit a project that we had previously been funded, the Hammond Armory. It was a boiler system. So we put that estimate in 3-4 years ago without an architecture firm's or an engineering firm's assistance. As we dove into it with the A&E firm, found that the costs were going to be slightly higher than what we had initially anticipated. Rather than throw up a stop sign at that point or the red flag at that point, we went ahead and took it to bid just to see what the market would bear to begin with, and we could get a better finite cost estimate. And that's why we're here today, requesting an additional $149,000 for that project. So it's designed, ready to be awarded, just need the additional funding.
Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Representative Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your previous comment about the update that you gave was very helpful. In respect to the National Guard and what you're doing in regards to the COVID, are the dollars coming in from FEMA to help reimburse you for those initiatives that you're providing for the state?
Yes, sir. It's a steady flow. We project or predict the costs for the soldiers, whatever equipment they're using, and that sort of thing. And that money continues to flow. As well, that money is flowing also through IDHS, and I would let Director Cox speak on that. But he is also seeking and getting that those reimbursements as on schedule, I guess. Not the next day, but it comes like quarterly. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, next we've got the university projects. We have Purdue, Ann Hazlitt, and Alicia Knopfsiner.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Mishler and members of the committee for the opportunity to join you today. We are here to update you on the academic expansion activity at our Fort Wayne campus and to seek your approval for disbursement of the $4.85 million that was appropriated in the 2021 budget. In the 2021 budget law, the legislature provided $2.425 million in each year of the biennium for Purdue Fort Wayne to expand its academic offerings. Let me start with giving just a little background on this issue. In 2016, the boards of trustees at both Purdue University and Indiana University agreed to realign then IPFW into two separate entities. And this decision was made after the results of a Legislative Services Agency study. So going into the 2017 budget, the legislature considered resources for each institution. IU received funding for its health sciences program, while Purdue opted to postpone its request for resources at the time until a strategic analysis was completed to determine how the new independent campus could best meet the needs, the current and the future economic needs of Northeast Indiana. So after a careful study, Purdue Fort Wayne worked with area businesses to identify three programmatic areas for funding. The first is materials, biomaterials, and bioengineering. The second is data science, applied statistics, and computer information systems. And the third area is strategic and risk management, financial services, and financial information systems. These three areas of concentration are a priority for the Northeast Indiana economy. So the money appropriated for the academic expansion will be used to hire faculty in these three industry concentrations. Purdue prioritized this request in our 2021 budget request and received strong support from regional legislators and industry. In early March, the entire Northeast Indiana delegation sent a letter to State House leadership in support of this request. And a few weeks later, business and community leaders from the region also sent a separate letter to express their support. And I pulled out a quote that I think is particularly relevant from that letter. It said, "A strategic investment in Purdue Fort Wayne's academic enterprise right now will help our regional economy recover more quickly from the pandemic and will ensure its corporate community has access to well-educated students who are ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work." We are deeply grateful for the General Assembly's support of our request, and particularly grateful to Senator Liz Brown for her tireless advocacy of this investment, and to Chairman Mishler for including these funds in the Senate budget. We are now ready to put these funds and these dollars to work. With the 2022 fiscal year already underway, the PFW team has been working diligently to develop the academic curriculum and to hire faculty to support these three new concentration areas. This team is led by Carl Drummond, who serves as the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and Enrollment and Management at PFW. Carl is here today. We asked him to come to be available to answer any specific questions you might have about this ramp-up effort. For the FY22 contract period, which began August 16th, 6 faculty commitments have been made and 1 additional search is ongoing. The remaining positions and the searches are then targeted for the spring semester as that curriculum material continues to be developed and student recruitment gets underway. So from that overview, I will now turn this over to Alicia Navziger, my new partner in government relations and the lead for Purdue on all fiscal matters. She can walk you through some of the numbers about how this money will be spent.
Thank you, Ann. So as she stated, the appropriation is $2.425 million a year for the current biennium. And Purdue Fort Wayne has begun fulfilling their commitment and hired nearly 6 faculty positions in those 3 targeted concentrations. So the money that you've provided for the expansion will support faculty salary and benefits only. So with these 6 faculty on board for fiscal 22, expenditures will total a little over $830,000. And the next fiscal year, the campus plans to hire another 6 faculty for a total expenditure of around $1.7 million. So, and also mention that the investment in these targeted concentrations originated in a report done by LSA a few years ago. They were also then vetted with Purdue-Fort Wayne's Industry Advisory Board. Over the last 4 years, Purdue-Fort Wayne has experienced a 14% undergraduate enrollment decline, while graduate enrollment has grown by nearly 20%. However, it's important to highlight that in the academic programs aligned with this state request today, undergraduate enrollment has grown by 6%, and graduate enrollment has grown by around 47%. So as other faculty resign or retire in the coming years, Purdue-Fort Wayne is committed to reallocating existing dollars from low-demand programs and shift them towards these high-demand programs that are industry-supported, which we have highlighted today. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
And I didn't turn my sheet over, so he is on the list as well, if you want to make any comments.
I don't have any comments,
Okay.
but I'm happy to.
Sorry, I didn't flip my page over, and so you are on there. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I'm going to mention how I came up with the 4.85, though, because I've been asked that question numerous times. So I was involved back in 16. IU took their money. Purdue wasn't ready for theirs. IU got 4.85, so we felt Purdue would get the same as we gave IU back then. So that's where we came up with the 4.85. So just so everybody knows. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is that in 2021 or
2016. So you lost the interest on that when you didn't take the money back then. Next we have Elaine Beadle, the Indiana Destination Development Corporation.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. I have the honor of serving as the current Secretary and CEO of the Indiana Destination Development Corporation. Maybe a little bit of history to remind you how we got here. In 2019, the legislature did pass legislation to create a quasi-government entity to basically replace the Indiana Office of Tourism Development with a much broader mission. Instead of just trying to talk about Indiana and all the wonderful things we have to offer to attract people here, we also are now trying to tell Indiana's quality of life story, which is actually the leisure and hospitality industry in this state, to brand, promote, and attract and retain students, talent, business, as well as visitors. So our strategic plan, which came into effect and has been approved by our boards, is to basically get that messaging together, to really brand Indiana and get the messaging outside the state. Think of Pure Michigan, something like that for Indiana. To attract and retain talent, as I mentioned, and to retain Indiana graduates. We have students that come here from all over the country and the world. We're number 5 states overall, when you look at all the years, top 5 states for attracting net inbound students to our colleges and universities. We have to do a better job of getting them connected to businesses here, to work here, as well as having an experience in our communities to be able to see themselves living and raising their families here as well. So we've got a great opportunity there. And then to attract and convert visitors, and there's some low-hanging fruit there. We do an awful lot of sports tourism from the tournaments that we host at Grand Park and many places around the state that attract all kinds of people here. And if any of you followed your students or your children to tournaments, you know that you play one game and you wait 4 hours for the next game or overnight to play. There's a great opportunity while they're there to give them that message of what it would be like to bring their business here, start a business here, and we've had a good example of that happen in Westfield, and so an individual did just that. So those are the kind of things that we see, along with all the conventions that we hold here, as opportunities to help convert some of those visitors to residents as well. And then to create Hoosier pride. We are humble Hoosiers, and we need to do something that will get everyone to be part of the big megaphone that talks about the positive things that Indiana has to offer everyone else. So that's kind of our plan. We were effective July 1st of 2020, so we're about 18 months into this new entity. And what I'm talking to you today is about the American Rescue Plan funding through the EDA. Economic Development Administration on the federal level for a grant that is the Tourism, Travel, and Outdoor Recreation Grant. $510 million was set aside for this through the American Rescue Act that had to be allocated among the 50 states, the territories, and DC. If you do the math, we should have gotten maybe about $10 million. We were allocated $5.5 million, and they based it on a formula of the amount GDP contribution by the leisure and hospitality industry, which in our state's about 10%, as well as your employment. We have about 210,000 people that work in the industry. So I think there are other states, obviously, that are much more dependent on tourism that probably got a larger allocation. It is a non-competitive grant, but it did come with some requirements. The governor got a letter of invitation in late July. We had 60 days to respond with our application. And there were 6 different areas of eligible uses of the funds. One of them was for marketing and promotion of the state of Indiana. All of it is to help the leisure and hospitality industry, obviously. The others were workforce development within the industry, infrastructure within the industry again, maybe upgrading of a convention center could be a possibility for it to be compliant with COVID requirements. So there were other things that we could do, technology assistance, et cetera. But what we did is we pulled together a committee that represented those different areas. Those committee members were Matt Eckert, who's the CEO of Holiday World and Splashing Safari, Mario Rodriguez from the Indianapolis Airport Authority, Chris Smith, a different Chris Smith from DNR, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff. We had the Indiana Restaurant and Lodging Association. Patrick Tam was on our committee, as well as Carrie Lambert from the Indiana Tourism Association. In addition, we had We Create, which is our firm that we elected as our created firm, or pulled on it as a creative firm through an RFP several months ago. They're giving us some advice as well. So that committee decided that the best use of all of those uses, of those eligible uses, would be to promote the state of Indiana, to raise all boats. Because if we were able to do that and attract more people from all those different areas outside the state, we would help the leisure and hospitality industry the most. And so that's what we did. We got our application in a timely manner and asked for funding to do the 4 different areas that we talked about were a visual asset inventory, so doing more videos, more photos to have in our inventory to be able to put pieces together to market the state. Digital and broadcast advertising, so actually buying both media and digital advertising to help boost what we do on a regular basis. Partnership onboarding, so looking at all of the industry that we could use as partners to get this word out. So be they corporations or universities or other foundations, we need them to use this messaging. The messaging, again, similar to a Pure Michigan, that works for Indiana, works for everyone, and that people would be willing to include it on their website. So that when people start seeing things, they notice, oh, that's Indiana, that's Indiana. And so suddenly you start building this data bank in your head that Indiana is important. I will step back for a second and say we did an awful lot of focus groups and other research during COVID. And I will tell you that if you didn't go to school in Indiana, don't have friends or family here, never visited here, you have no idea what Indiana has to offer. Nothing. Luckily, it's not a bad perception. It's basically no perception. So we've got a great opportunity if we can get our message out and we can get a really big megaphone, as I said, every entity in the state getting behind it, just as they did Pure Michigan in the state of Michigan. We can be very effective in telling our story. It's a blank slate out there, but if we don't take the opportunity to do that, we're going to be remaining in the place that we are, wondering why talent doesn't want to come when they're offered a great job and why some of our graduates of our Indiana universities don't stay here. So we've got to do a better job of that, and I think this funding, the additional $5.5 million, will help us get that kick-started a little bit more.
Question, so you mentioned Pure Michigan, so they've got a great tagline, and so what I'm hearing is I hope you're going to change our tagline because ours is pretty bad.
We don't have a tagline right now.
Well, they had one a couple years ago.
Yeah,
they came up with a new one. It was, thank you. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So it's gone, right?
Yeah, it's gone. It's
good,
gone. All you see now is Indiana, established in 1816, is all we're using as kind of a logo. We are working on that. I mentioned We Create. It's a creative firm out of Valparaiso. Has been working with us for several months now to come up with something like that. So we're hoping that we can have something in the first quarter ready to kind of roll out.
Because as you can see, you know, Michigan did a great job because everybody uses Pure Michigan.
Right. Well, and that's exactly what we need. Every corporation will put it somewhere,
Yeah.
every college and university. So that's what we have to do. And every citizen, you know, hashtag Pure Michigan when they post a photo. We need that kind of Hoosier pride, and I think we can get it if we just give ourselves the opportunity to do that. And to be quite honest, we've not done that in the past. There's not been the funding to do that. Pure Michigan, for example, has a budget of $40 million. And they've been doing it since 2005. So not only do we need funding, we need consistency of continuing to move that forward, but it has worked for them. You know, you might see a lot of advertising right now from our neighboring states, you know, not only Michigan, but Kentucky, Illinois, Ohio, saying come visit Ohio, ads on morning news. It drives me crazy. And you might think that we're doing that. We're not, because we don't have the funding. To do that just in our bordering states would be at least $15 to $20 million. If you wanted to tap into the Chicago market, add another $5 million. And that's just our surrounding states. And we're a great drive-in state. People like to come here, but we could really capitalize on that if we were able to market. We're not marketing anywhere because we don't have the funding. You know, our current allocation is like $5.8 million, which is what IOTD has been getting, the tourism department received earlier. And so that's continued on, which we're thankful for, but about $1.5 million of that goes out to someone else. You know, it's FFA, which is in Indianapolis right now. We give them $500,000, so we're just the pass-through for that. Indiana Sports Corp gets $550,000. Did I say 500 million? FFA gets 500,000. Sports Corp gets another 550,000. We give a couple of different museums some funding, and we're required to do, which we do anyway, marketing for the DNR of 500,000. So we end up with about 4.2 million of a budget to do something with. So we can't even get started with putting dollars out. So again, we hope that this 5.5 million, along with some funding that we hope to convince some partners out in the communities that they could maybe help us do some funding or some other advertising. But more importantly than even funding coming from other corporations is the idea that they will support us and that they will share in this, partnering with us and putting this message out. That's probably a lot more than you wanted to know, but...
No, I'm just glad to hear, because I think people undervalue the importance of bringing people here for tourism, because that leads to permanent residence.
Absolutely.
And you got to get them here first, because when they come, they'll say, wow, we didn't realize you had this.
Well, you know, and that's the reason we did the Hoosier by Choice video series. So if you haven't seen those, HoosierByChoice.com. We've been releasing 2 videos every week since late January. And they're people who moved here from somewhere else, normally for a job or some other opportunity, and they're amazed. It's like, oh my gosh, look what I discovered. I'm never leaving here. And they're heartwarming stories for people who've born and raised in Indiana. We take a lot of the things for granted. They say, I didn't find this anywhere else. And so we're trying to do that. And it does all start with a visit. We all know that. If they don't come and see it with their own eyes, it's a problem. And so we have to work on that.
Senator Brown.
Thank you. Then I would start with, I guess I'm going to go backwards. Hoosiers by Choice, never heard of it. So perhaps you should share it with us, so those of us who send out e-newsletters could throw it in there as a little...
We'd love to.
Sorry, let me take this lifesaver out. But I'd have to say, and I know you're running through your presentation quickly, but I am not as concerned about students who come here from out of state to college. If they came to Grace College, for example, they'd see this beautiful town. You have access to the lakes. It's gorgeous. It's quaint. You have access to beautiful state parks. And although you can never not market enough, I mean, knowing that they were over 90% capacity, that showcases our state, but they maybe per se don't need the marketing to fill their campsites. My concern is outside of Indianapolis, quite frankly. Fort Wayne has multiple sports facilities. It has a World Baseball Academy. It has the Tin Caps, which is rated the #1 stadium consistently. They would like to build a soccer stadium there. And I might add, I'd rather locals, you know, if you build it locally, you pay for it to prove proof of concept. But I have sort of rung the bell, for example, for Turnstone, which is the only Paralympic training site in the state of Indiana. They just came back from winning medals
Right.
at the Paralympics.
Right.
And frankly, from my point of view, it's almost crickets. And so I think we could do a lot more. Indianapolis has pro sports and things that trickle down from there. But those of us who are 2 hours plus away from Indianapolis, Gary has a baseball stadium, which I drive by on my way to Chicago for short visits. Certainly would never want to move there to get Chicago, not Gary. We all have these kinds of facilities that we're also trying to sell. And I think that we need to emphasize that you don't have to move to the city of Indianapolis for tourism or travel or outdoor recreation. It's all over the state. And I hear frustrations from entities that have had established sorts of things. We have a massive basketball tournament system that goes on in my city as well. So those are the kinds of things I think is frustrating. And I think the locals would be more willing to pay into continuing to support it when their communities are also cited, because so many of us feel it's much too much Indianapolis-centric.
Right. A couple things if I can respond. We're not trying to attract students to Indiana. We think our colleges and universities do a great job of that. We're trying to retain them when they graduate. So we're going to be putting programs into place to get them connected. So I thought...
I just have to say, though, I feel like that's going, and I don't mean to be, but we have workforce development, we have the colleges, and I'll use it as example, Purdue. Their students, top engineering school in the country, if the job is here, they're going to stay here. We've had that conversation. Here we are in the orthopedic capital of the world. If the job's here, they'll stay here. If we now have you trying to sell a student who graduated and spent 4 years in the state of Indiana, and they're from Chicago to hot mess of California or wherever, and they still want to go there, then that's they're following the job. But if we think we're going to convince them to stay because of beautiful Winona and there's no job here for them, I just don't really feel like our tourism dollars should be spent on keeping students who are graduating from college to stay here. I don't see how that's really within your mission.
Well, we see it as part of the mission to attract talent and to retain graduates. That's what I mentioned as the broader mission. But I understand what you're saying. But we also need to get them exposed to the companies, because there are jobs here that aren't getting filled because they're going somewhere else. I mean, Purdue has shared with me that, Google and Facebook camp out on campus. So they're grabbing the best students as they come around, talking to them all the time. However, our own businesses don't show up maybe once a year, maybe at a job fair, but they don't come and promote themselves to the students as others do from outside the state. So
that's the tourism. I just think, how is that the Destination Development Corporation? Why isn't that IEDC? If Google's not here in the state of Indiana and they want to work for Google, that's one issue. But if there's a Google-like company, smaller, but with the potential to grow to become, and that's in the state of Indiana, and they are not connecting with their potential employees, either because they don't know how to, or they don't have the scale that they can afford to take 5 employees, which is what I hear from smaller businesses, to sit on all the campuses, then why isn't the Department of Workforce Development or the IEDC connecting them? Now we're gonna spend tourism dollars?
Well, we're not really, the tourism dollars we're talking about here will not be spent exactly on that. It'll be talking about Indiana's quality of life story, which is to attract people to come here. But part of that has to be a result of wanting to have those students understand the quality of life they have. So one of them is getting them off campus to have an experience somewhere off campus, as well as to get them connected to jobs, because that's the way we fill the jobs there and we grow our economy. So we see that as important. I mean, that's, again, part of the broader scope that was outside of what IOTD did. But to your point, we need to tell our story better. We need to get those people there. And even those students, if they don't accept their first job here and they go back home or go wherever, if they have a good experience, they may be more likely to accept their second job here and come back to Indiana to grow our population and grow our economy. So these dollars are not being pushed that direction. These dollars are all about the messaging side and promoting Indiana and telling our story and building a positive perception outside the state of Indiana. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We should have more conversation.
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Kind of a follow-up to both Senator Brown and Chairman. I'm going to talk about the tagline real quick, not to revisit the old tagline, but just to inquiring about the tourism aspect and also the potential residency aspect. Have there been conversations with regional groups in tourism as well as local Lido groups to say, what is that tagline that's so universal that's going to want folks to visit, but also want to keep folks or attract folks to live? Because to your point, I think because we touch so many different states that have strong media outlets, Chicagoland, Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky, it's a lot of different audiences to reach. Right? So, like, what does that conversation look like among Lidos and tourism groups?
Right. We have been keeping them engaged. We have not come out with a focus group yet to ask, do you like this? That will come down the road, and how we'll partner with that once we put something together. But it's been interesting how supportive everyone that I've talked to about this messaging idea, and the destination marketing organizations around the state, as well as the economic development groups, all want some kind of a consistent message that we can get out and share. And if we all support the same message, people will start hearing it. And they see that need, and they're very supportive of doing something like that. The other thing that we're doing to really help in the regions is we're creating a statewide website. And if you Google Indiana now, it's hard to say where you might land, but we want them to land on this website. We'll talk all about Indiana, what we have to offer, the quality of life, et cetera, quality of place, and then connect into all the regional websites that are doing the same thing. You know, Forge Your Path, which is East Central Indiana, has a great website that we want to connect into. So when people hit the Indiana website, they can go down to each of the different regions' websites as well.
Right. I think also to kind of follow up, and this is no offense to my Central Indiana folks, but I think for the districts or the regions that may not have the capacity or the resources or the office to promote
right
and to market, how's there opportunities to partner with this?
Well, right now there's several opportunities in the marketing side. You know, because they can't do a travel guide their own, we do a statewide travel guide and they buy advertising in it. So we can co-op basically and put things out as a group that they can't do individually. And they've got opportunities for banner ads on our social media. We just haven't had the funding to really promote all of the areas of the state as we'd like to. You know, we've got enough funding to keep our staff and do all of the social media push out that we can, because that's the best way to do it now, but it's all organic. You know, we don't have very many dollars to put behind it so people make sure they see it, that it jumps up at the top when you Google something. But we're building, you know, we've got 150,000 followers of our newsletters and different social media that get very specific things, newsletters about what's happening in Indiana, and from visitindiana.com. There's blogs that are written, but we're doing everything on basically a shoestring budget because we don't have the big dollars to put behind it. So we're doing the best we can, and we'd love to get out and help the regions even more, but there's just not the funding ability to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, the tagline was so bad I couldn't remember it, so I did a Google search.
Honest to
No,
goodness.
that was the old one. This is the new one. That was the old one. It's Honest to Goodness, Indiana.
Honest to goodness. Before that was Wander, Indiana. Honest to I know. So we're going to try and do better than that.
And we
so.
put so much emphasis on it. That's what gets me. It's like, oh, we got this great tagline, and it's like, what? So, good luck.
Thank you. It's going to be a challenge, but we're going to do our best, and I think we're on a road to do that. Thank you all.
That was a long time ago. All right, next we have, I'm glad we have so much excitement about tourism here. State Board of Accounts, Lisa Ackelberg.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a way to really switch gears here, right? I've got a couple of things on the agenda. I don't know if you want me to keep going or just start with the State Board of Accounts. But this is a $21,725.79 request from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. This is for mainly PPE, remote work, and personnel expenses for the last, from the time that the Coronavirus Relief Funding started. These are some of the cleanup items we're doing towards the end of the year as we finish out the Coronavirus Relief Fund.
BMV between you here,
Okay.
Lisa. So I got Heidi with BMV. But we'll
Good
come right back.
morning. I'm Heidi Babkowski. I have not had the pleasure of speaking to any of you yet. I'm CFO for the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and cover the Bureau of Motor Vehicles Commission as well. We're coming today to seek reimbursement of up to about $2 million or $2.5 million to be exact, $2,514,495.92. Of that, we've incurred almost $2.4 million of costs related to the COVID pandemic. So starting in March of 2020, we were incurring expenses to keep not only our employees but the public safe. We initially closed for about a month because it was deemed unsafe to be open, and then very quickly we were deemed an essential business, and so we were forced to reopen. That meant that we had to find a way to keep the people in the branches safe. We had to find a way to clean to keep people safe from a security perspective because, as you remember, tensions were high. We ended up having to purchase plexiglass to put between not just the customer and the employee, but between the customers and between the employees. In addition to that, we were cleaning the branches, all 129, every day we were open. Those branches were traditionally cleaned 1 to 2 times a week. So those costs piled up very quickly. The additional security also was very pricey. And then on top of that, we were purchasing, I'm going to call it PPE. In addition to the plexiglass, we were purchasing masks. We were purchasing, and still are, plastic covers to put over people's car seats because we have senior drive examiners that are getting in other people's cars to give those drive exams on a daily basis. I know most of us can't even stand going into the grocery store and standing in line next to someone for 5 minutes, let alone sitting in their car for 30 to 45 minutes to give a drive exam. And so we are doing everything we can continually to keep not just our employees, but those customers safe. As I mentioned before, we've incurred almost 2.4 of the $2.5 million to date. That spread, just to give you an idea, is about $700,000 in cleaning. We're hoping to back some of that off pretty soon. Some of it we've been able to. If we have a confirmed positive case in a branch, we go in and do what they call a disinfect in order to make sure we've removed all traces of the virus. I'm an accountant, so I'm not going to get into the science of that, but they think that it's necessary, so that's what we do. Security, at this point, we've incurred just over $1 million. And yes, we did have security in some locations previously, but we had some pretty intense situations when we reopened by appointment only. We continue to have occasional intense situations because we have longer lines. We can't let people in because we're remaining 6 feet apart within the branches. So just something that we identified some higher risk locations and said we need that security there to keep people safe. And then supplies, some ongoing, some one time. I mentioned the plexiglass. We've incurred about $665,000 to date. Like I said, that all comes up to about $2.4 million, but we continue to incur those. And so we're seeking reimbursement from the Coronavirus Relief Fund for up to $2.5 million to reimburse us for what we incur through the end of the calendar year. So, questions?
I do accounting too, so you're gonna have to help me out here. So I have no doubt you incurred these expenses, but you're temporarily closing branches due to lack of workforce, which I would think would result in huge savings, which would offset your losses. So can you explain that?
So the cost I'm talking about right now, we've incurred prior to now. Yes, we are saving some money because
Saving large sums of money now, which should have offset your losses from back then.
yes, they would, but we also, and I didn't put it in here, we also waived fees at the end of fiscal year 2020. And so we took about a $5 million hit with regards to admin penalty fees and credit card transaction fees that we generally charge as basically a convenience fee online. And so in total, we're up to about $7.5, $8 million in costs that we've incurred.
How much are you saving right now by not having these branches open?
Not nearly that much. I don't have the number off the top of my head. We did just approve some minimal pay raises to frontline employees, and so we're preparing to take a hit for that as well because it wasn't budgeted. So yes, we have some savings fiscal year to date, but we anticipate eating part of that up with the new people we're hiring and raising minimum wage from $13.50 an hour to $15.
Well, what I would like you to do for us is to get us the savings that you're incurring right now because of these branches being closed, because I'd like to see how much of this is offset.
I don't have the exact.
Well, I know you
dollar
don't now, but I'm asking you to get that for us. Can you do
Okay.
that for us?
Yep, I can get that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Senator Brown.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the savings we're having aren't coming from the branch closures. They're coming from the fact that we are short-staffed, and that's what's causing it. By closing those branches temporarily for 30 days, we're still paying the lease. We're still paying the electric. We're still paying to maintain that facility.
And if you're not paying them, you
Right.
should be having
So there are
pretty
some
sizable
savings.
savings.
Yes.
Okay, and I'd just like to know what those are.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'd like to share it with us, and so we can share it with the other members, so.
Yeah, not as I'll get the number for you. They're not as significant as you would anticipate. Again, these people are only making $15 an hour, so it takes a while for it to add up.
I'm just looking at it conceptually, so.
Yep, no, absolutely. I'll get
Okay.
the number for you.
Senator Brown.
Thank you. Along the lines of the closures of the branches, so you said you, for some reason, were not considered essential, so you shut for a month, and then you were forced to open. I'm sure everybody wanted to be open because you're such an essential business. But moving on, the closures later are all due to a lack of workforce?
The current closures are, yes.
Okay, so that has impacted my community, Fort Wayne, Allen County. So I guess at the minimum, I read about the closures in the newspaper. So it would be helpful, at least, if we were informed, if not beforehand, knowing that you're gonna do that, but at least simultaneously. So if constituents have concerns and/or, again, when we send out information, we can at least share that. It's gonna be a little bit delayed, but there is nothing worse. Not everybody looks on the internet to see what the opening hours, and I can't imagine that they're all refreshed in real time, to go to a branch and find out the hours have been altered. Particularly when we know you've done a great job over the years of automating and allowing a lot of things to be done online, but not everything can be done online. So that would be really helpful if we were informed at the same time.
Okay, absolutely. I'll pass it along to our marketing and communications team and make sure that we take it a step further with that communication.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right. And I will get that information to you. Thank you.
Okay, back to Lisa.
This is for the Indiana Board of Depositories. This is also CRF related as we close out the CRF funds. This is $23,972.67. This is mainly. You can't hear? Oh, sorry, Representative Porter. This is for the Board of Depository. This is CRF related. And this is mainly to technology for that office to do some remote work during when we were closed down and just change some of the technologies. They had some computer purchases. They needed to upgrade their computers to allow staff to work off-site. And just a reminder, we do enter into MOUs with all of these agencies for the CRF program. You can find those MOUs on our website, on the budget agency website under the COVID-19 financial management page. Okay, and the last is for the state budget agency. As part of the requirement of the CRF program, we have subrecipient monitoring responsibility. So we're asking for $300,000 to finish out our subrecipient monitoring and substate monitoring through the end of the CRF program.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Next. What's that? Oh, yeah. Next we have one review, well, all from FSSA, and we have Paul Bowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For today, I have 4 SPA and waiver amendments. The first waiver amendment relates to the Family Supports Waiver and the Community Integration and Habilitation Waiver. There's 2 changes actually in this amendment. The first part of the amendment is incorporating the 14% rate increase for the direct care services that was under these waivers that was part of the budget bill for 22 and 23. As most of you are aware, as part of that requirement, providers are required to spend 95% of the increased reimbursement on direct care staff and benefits for those staff. Along with this rate increase, we also needed to increase the cap for the FSW waiver from $17,300 to $19,614 to ensure that no services were lost for any individuals. So any individual that would have hit that previous cap, we increased the cap to ensure that they could maintain the level of services they previously were receiving. For this particular change for these waivers, this would be effective January 1st, 2022. The fiscal impact of the change for 2022 is $51.5 million overall, with the state share of $11.9 million, and for 2023, a total of $106.7 million, with a state share of $53.8 million. The second part of this amendment is related to the vehicle modification services and the specialized medical equipment services. These currently are combined into one services. Based on CMS requirements, they're now requiring us to separate out those services. So we are doing this through this amendment and then also setting those caps for those specific services. So for this change, a fairly minimal fiscal impact. For 2022, overall, it's a $300,000 impact with the state share of $100,000, and for 2023, an estimated impact of $400,000 with a state share of $200,000. Again, this change would also be effective January 1st of 2022. Okay. The second item I have is the SPA amendment, which changes the length of time which a Medicaid recipient is eligible for services during their postpartum period. Currently, a pregnant woman, once they go into their postpartum period, is allowed 60 days to remain on the Medicaid program. This amendment would actually extend that from 60 days to a 12-month period from there. This was made available to us under the American Rescue Plan Act from there. And as you may be aware of right now, currently under the enhanced FMAP MOE requirement, we must maintain everybody currently under Medicaid in their current services. So currently none of these pregnant women going into the postpartum period would be losing coverage after 60 days. So this is not affecting them at this time. This change would be effective 4/1 in 2022. And as we look at this, the estimated impact, the total cost is around $300,000 with the state share of $100,000 in 2022. And in 2023, the estimated total cost is $3.2 million with a state share of $700,000. Okay, all right. The third amendment we have on here is based on a new CMS requirement that requires the state to change the way that TPL payments are handled for prenatal services. Currently, when we are doing the way that payments are made, we do a pay and chase, meaning that providers will bill us, we will pay them under Medicaid, and then we will try to get payments from third-party insurance companies. As we move forward, it'll change in that providers will now be required to bill their primary insurance first, and then get payment from that primary insurance, and then after that be able to bill Medicaid. So again, this is a CMS requirement. This does align this to how all the other services are being paid for these services, and we do not expect this to have any fiscal impact on us. All right. The fourth and final one, SPA amendment, was something that was mandated under House Bill 1468 in the 2021 session, which will allow for Medicaid to reimburse from MRO services currently reimbursed under the Residential Addiction Treatment Program. So currently, if someone is in the Addiction Service Treatment Program, a provider was not also allowed to bill for MRO services. So this change would allow for, as long as those services were not covered under the per diem of the residential treatment program, they could bill for MRO services while they are still under that program, under this. This is a pretty small impact also. This change would be effective 1/1/2022. The estimated fiscal impact for 2022 is around $290,000 with a state share of $130,000. And for 2023, a total cost of $560,000 with a state share of $290,000. Also, just to note, the state share of this is actually paid through an IGT by the community mental health centers since they pay the state share for all MRO services. Any questions? All right, thank you.
All right, that was the only review item. So is there any motion to remove anything from the agenda?
I move the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we have one discussion item. Chris Johnston. A very busy man.
As you all are. Good morning, Senator Mishler and members of the committee. I have a brief update this month, and so you're probably very appreciative of that. The activities continue with the Coronavirus Relief Fund closeout activities, and if I can, take a step back to the agenda that we just went through. So the BMV, the Board for Depositories, the State Board of Accounts, those are all items that are part of this ongoing process. And so, as an example, and then you heard Colonel Hines speak about it, because Representative Porter asked about, is the FEMA coming through for a lot of their activities? This is all part of the settlement process, and we may have some some National Guard and Homeland Security items come back before us because they continue to review all of those activities. And where, as an example for National Guard, depending on the facility, whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, determines whether FEMA is going to reimburse some of those costs. And so we're continuing to work through all of these things. The reason that BMV and the other smaller requests were here is the same sort of thing. FEMA was coming back, taking an inordinate amount of time and doing their evaluation. And so we had the resources in the CRF basically taking from the remaining allocation to the UI trust fund that we've set aside back December of 2020. So we would basically reallocate those funds to cover these costs that FEMA is. When you talk to them, they're saying, well, we'll get to it when we get to it. And some of the projections are saying that it would be over a year before we actually even get the determination as to whether they would cover those costs. And so that's a lot of this activity that's going on right now and will continue to go on for eligible costs through the end of this calendar year. And so Heidi will get the information that was requested, and that's very important information as well because of some of the fiscal impacts to their budget. But these are being presented as eligible costs for PPE and the other activities that the CRF can cover. So we'll continue to do that through the end of the year. The final settlement, we don't have the rules set out from Treasury or the notice from Treasury as to when the true-up actually has to occur, but we suspect it's probably going to be in the first 90 days of the calendar year for the CRF fund. The next slides really are quick updates on the American Rescue Plan. So on slide 3, if you recall, there's a chunk of the money that comes through for cities and towns with a population of 50,000 and less come through the state of Indiana, which then are distributed out after going through an application process. And so through, I think last Thursday, 485 of the 543 eligible units have applied and received their money, or they may the ones that applied last week may be getting their money this week. But out of the total first half of, or first installment that was distributed, 98% or close to 99%, you can see here almost 214 million of the 216 million has been distributed. One of the things that Treasury has done for the local units of government, those that are receiving money, they don't have their first quarterly report. It's been pushed back from right now to March 31 of 2020. It needs to be filed by the 30 days following that. On slide 4 is just a reminder of the appropriations that the General Assembly put in the last budget from the American Rescue Plan. And then on slide 5 and 6, what I want to do is just give some updates on the activities the state agencies have been undertaking to activate these appropriations. So the UI Trust Fund restoration, that was an appropriation of $500 million. That is being processed this week, and so it should be in the trust fund, the state's trust fund, very shortly. A couple of the appropriations dealt with the public safety equipment, body cams, and stab vests at DOC. 765 body-worn and in-car cameras have been deployed, and then the stab vest procurement process is being started at DOC. The premium pay for state troopers and DOC custody officers, the state troopers received their stipends last August, and DOC staff received theirs earlier this month. On slide 6, we have the Career Accelerator. That's the $75 million in income share agreement program for certificate and non-certificate programs in high-demand industries and occupations. 38 program applications were received. There's a review process, and then that's brought before InvestEd, and 11 have been approved so far. I'm sure you've heard about the READY program, the Regional Economic Advancement and Development Initiative. The 17 applications have been received, and IEDC is in process of reviewing those over the next couple of months, and I believe they're going to make, if not final determinations, at least report out at their December board meeting. Water and sewer, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned this last month, that program is oversubscribed. They received 500 applications, almost 500 applications, and the request exceeded $700 million. Those awards were made in September. And then broadband had just received their first sort of declaration of intent. They had letters of over 250 letters of intent, and the requests were over $600 million. And then the other bullet I have in there is I've mentioned that I think right before our last budget committee, the U.S. Treasury announced the Capital Projects Fund, and Indiana is receiving $203 million. The instructions on that is very focused on broadband, and so a lot of the things that the OCRA and the Lieutenant Governor's Office is doing with the program align very nicely with a lot of the program features that the U.S. Treasury is seeking to be developed, and so we'll be working with that. And so while I guess in the last budget session, we didn't have confirmation on the Capital Projects Fund, so that's a supplement to what has already been appropriated. One thing that's not here, so this is really just some brief recaps and updates of the appropriations. There's the Emergency Rental Assistance Program that the Housing Community Development Authority is administering for the state, and I'd like to touch on that just a little bit, and because that's been in various media outlets, and the federal government and the U.S. Treasury is really promoting that program. And so at September 30th, there was a threshold date that 65% of the first round of the ERA needed to be obligated. The state of Indiana, we were at 58%. And so with the rules that, and guidance that just came out in the last couple of weeks, the Housing and Community Development Authority will be required to submit a performance plan on not only the current status, but what actions they'll be taking going forward. Many states did not hit the 65% threshold. But as of today, or I guess last night, they were at 65.5%. $219 million has been obligated, and $65 million of that program has been paid out to a little over 13,000 households. One of the things that, if you remember, so the housing, the state of Indiana has received an allocation of this money, but then jurisdictions with a population over, boy, I used to be pretty good at numbers. I want to say 250,000, I think. But there were 5 counties that applied directly and administered their own programs. So you have Lake, St. Joe, Elkhart, Hamilton, and Marion County. The city of Fort Wayne, because it had population over 250,000, elected to do it, have their own program. And so those 6 entities were administering their own program. When you looked at the allocation that came to the state of Indiana versus the amount of money that came to those other jurisdictions, where most of our population is and most of the need was going to be, it didn't really make a lot of sense, to be honest with you. And so the IHCDA has subgranted additional money to those other counties that have requested that money. And so $91 million has been subgranted to Marion County. $6 million has been awarded to the city of Fort Wayne. $3.3 million is to St. Joe County, and $19 million to Lake County. And so, again, that's, the Housing Authority has been in contact with those jurisdictions as far as their need and asking, whether they have sufficient funds. This isn't a one-time shot. They can continue to give additional funds as the needs are assessed. The other latest development in the housing area, the rental area, is that the Supreme Court has created an eviction diversion task force that has the small claims court judges and I want to say Judge Altice from the court system developing this program, and that is supposed to start on November 1st. And really, the state of Texas sort of got out of the gate first with a good model, and really what that is if somebody comes in, the landlord and tenant are starting the small claims court process, the first step is, have you gone over to this program to try to apply for these funds to mitigate the issue for a certain time period. And so that should be up and running next week. And then finally on 7 is just some Treasury updates. Again, similar to the local government, our reporting period on a quarterly basis does not start until January for December 31st as of date. We will continue to we have to monitor and send in reports of how well we're doing on the local government distributions. We've been working very closely with the accelerating Indiana municipalities as far as getting the word out. If you go back to that slide, there's probably 80 municipalities that have not applied for like $2 million. And AIM doesn't think that whether they're interested or not. I mean, they've done emails. Their annual conference was this year. This was discussed at many forums. There is a point where they will be deemed non-responsive, and the amount of money that that $2 million that would otherwise go to those 50 or 60 communities can get redeployed to those entities that have applied. And so because it's such a small dollar amount, I think it would end up when you're taking $2 million and then distributing it out over 480 entities, it ends up being $6,000 or $7,000. So we'll probably wait and add that to their second installment that we will get next June. And then finally, we're still working under the interim final rule. The final rule has still not been issued, and so we'll be awaiting that and make any adjustments we need to do from there.
You know, Chris, I know I said something Monday on the panel, but I just want to thank you for all your hard work and the research you've done on the best uses, the eligible uses of this federal money and getting that to us in a timely manner. So I really appreciate your work on that.
Thank you very much. Well, I have to thank the SBA staff, and they're a great team, and they're the ones that are sort of the tentacles going out to all the state agencies that are administering it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Brown.
Thank you. Just a quick question. So for the broadband, we put 250 in the budget. Obviously, it was oversubscribed by 350 million. So is that 203 million extra capital projects that just came in eligible for broadband? Is that what you were saying?
Well, I think most of the 250 million, the opportunity is to use 200, this capital projects fund, to fund that $200 million or $250 million. And we'd be able to use it for other purposes. So I just confused the whole matter.
So not extra money?
But it is not extra money.
Okay, that's my, thank you.
What has happened, though, is the appropriations for these funds were a little bit over the $3.1 million. So we actually over appropriated the money last spring. Now this additional money, because of that, we'll probably have an additional $150 million to consider, or the General Assembly can consider how to appropriate that.
Any other comments, concerns, questions, thoughts? So our next meeting will be the forecast in December. So we haven't set a date yet. We're working on that. It's tentatively going to be, mid-December. Usually it's probably that. Usually I think we do it the week before Christmas, if I recall. So we'll shoot for that week. I just don't have a date and time yet. And they'll be back in Indianapolis. So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn.
Thank you, sir.